Welcome to literary and jury charge practice. Let's start out with some literary, and this is one we had started before called What to Do with Those Old Steno Machines. Ready? Here we go. Professionals typically reach out to us if they have a machine to donate. Through the grants we have received in the past, we have machines for campus students that cycle through the program. We are able to supply online students with the same opportunity with the machines donated by professionals. Additionally, for students mentioning they have spoken to a professional, I encourage them to reach out and see if they have an extra machine available. She adds. Johnson notes that she and her staff are not at all shy about asking for donations of old machines and other items, especially since working professionals have been consistently very generous with the program. Donations are critical to the success of our program. Please know how grateful we are for decades of donations, not limited to machines, but also including guest speakers, mentors, and scholarship donors. In Pittsburgh, professional reporters donate their time, talent, and treasure consistently, Johnson says. All right, now we'll try some jury charge practice. Ready? Here we go. If you have determined that plaintiff established by a preponderance of the evidence all the elements of her case, then the burden of proof shifts to defendant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the difference in pay is justified under one of the Equal Pay Act's 4 exceptions. The 4 exceptions are: a seniority system, a merit system, a system that measures earnings by quantity or quality of productions, or a differential based on any factor other than sex. To establish that one of the exceptions applies, defendant must show that the factor of sex provided no part of the basis for the wage difference. If defendant establishes that a difference in pay is caused by any factor other than sex, you must decide in favor of defendant. On the other hand, if you determine that defendant has failed to prove that a difference in pay is caused by a factor other than sex, you must decide in favor of plaintiff. If plaintiff has proven her claim against defendant by a preponderance of the evidence, you must determine the damages to which she may be entitled. You should not interpret the fact that I have given instructions about plaintiff's damages as an indication in any way that I believe that plaintiff should or should not win this case. It is your task first to decide whether defendant is liable. I am instructing you on damages only so that you will have guidance in the event you decide that defendant is liable and that plaintiff is entitled to recover money from defendant. If you are to answer the damages questions, it will be necessary for you to determine whether defendant's violation of the Equal Pay Act was willful or non-willful. In order for you to find that defendant's violation was willful, plaintiff must prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant either knew or showed reckless disregard for whether its conduct was prohibited by the statute. Otherwise, the violation was non-willful. If you answered yes to the preceding question, and defendant's violation was willful, then the relevant time period for calculating plaintiff's damages begins on September 13, 2010, 3 years before plaintiff filed this suit on September 13, 2013, and ends on May 14, 2014, the date that the job of Assistant Dean for Administrative Services of Thurgood Marshall School of Law was changed to a different job title with added responsibilities. Take a break from jury charge and try some more literary practice. This is called Desert Canvas. Ready? Here we go. This is a place for rebels and outlaws. I told my friend Hazel as we zigzagged through the back roads of Joshua Tree, bouncing down one barely paved street after another. It was our last day in the desert, and we were looking for the Noah Purifoy Outdoor Desert Art Museum of Sculpture, an unconventional art collection, and one of the main reasons for this weekend trip. For months, I'd been reading about the art and culture of this place, and when we finally made it to the desert, it was clear why the area around Joshua Tree National Park has seduced so many artists and other creatives. The cotton candy colored sunsets, the vast snake hole littered landscape, the extreme and fickle climate, dry heat, flash floods, and the strange and singular plant life. Everything about the desert demands full attention, the same kind of all-consuming energy needed when creating art. I wanted just a taste of that, a small spark. We began our art weekend with local photographers Jim Smart and Paul Martini, whom we met via the Desert Institute, where Jim teaches photography courses. We followed Paul's pickup truck, and at each stop, the men told us the national park's history, tales of prospectors who had braved settling here way back when. As our photographer, Hazel, forged ahead with Jim, who pointed out the best photo ops, I hung behind with Paul and said that we'd missed the best light. I felt better when he said, "You can take a picture of a spot in the park 30 times and not capture it." One of my favorite spots was Cap Rock. Legend has it that this was also a favorite of musician Graham Parsons, who died nearby in 1973. Paul said that Parsons' manager had stolen his body, brought it to Cap Rock, and tried to perform an illegal cremation to honor the singer's wishes. We were so taken with the park that we decided to return on our own at sunrise the next day to shoot with better light. Maybe this was a sign that the desert was making artists of us too. After more than half a dozen stops on Saturday morning, we had worked up quite an appetite. At Jim and Paul's earlier recommendation, we each had a slice of pie at Natural Sisters Cafe before spending the rest of the afternoon browsing Joshua Tree's main drag of little art galleries and vintage stores. On Sunday, it took a few looks at our map to find Purifoy's museum, which was a surprise. 10 acres of open land strewn with jutting sculptures and beautiful unidentified art objects made of junk. Toilet seats, metal scraps, tires, discarded wood, bowling balls, bits and bobs of this and that, all in beautiful combinations. Purifoy, who died in 2004, came to the desert from Los Angeles in 1989, and he purposefully used materials that would be changed by their environment, many of which were provided by the community. He didn't name every piece, but invited viewers to make their own ideas. That made me feel like part of his process, and our proximity to the art was both exciting and humbling. And we'll stop there, and that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.